Hi everyone, welcome to episode 4 of VFX Notes. I'm Ian Fales from Befores and Afters, and I'm joined by Hugo Guerra from Hugo's Desk. Hi Hugo, how you going?
Hey, hello everyone, and hi Ian, how you doing?
I'm great, thanks. Yeah, really good down here in Sydney. We're still in lockdown, but it's perfectly fine, and I'm in my little bunker
Yeah.
with Hugo. A bit of a background.
Where's the speed poster? Come on, where is it?
Okay. There's a small story about this. So we live in a pretty small apartment, and I'm afraid to tell everybody that all my speed posters are in storage,
Oh man.
which might shock some people, but it was because we live in a really small place and there's literally nowhere for them. So they're okay. They're there with the inflatable speed bus, but they'll be retrieved one day.
But I still see speed on the back there. It's still there. You have the bus there.
There's a bus in a box. That's right.
There's a bus in the box, and there's a nice Godzilla there. For those of you listening on the podcast, you need to check out the video on YouTube. There's like a really nice Godzilla there. There's also like two, of course, the Before and Afters magazine, of course, front and center there. So yeah, it's a nice background, man. Yes, I like it. I like it a lot.
Thank you. Doesn't hold a candle to yours, Hugo, but
it's fine.
here we are. I promised it would happen.
Mine is like more like a man cave. It's more like that. So
That's right. And Hugo, what's been happening with you in the past 2 weeks since we last recorded?
So a lot of things have happened. I'm going to be brief. So just so everyone knows, I am back on Twitch, which has been a big request for everyone. So I'm going to be back on Twitch every Wednesday. It's going to be a regular show. It's going to be a call-in show for the first time. So I've done this a few times when I have showreel reviews where people call in. But it's going to be just like a radio show. We're going to have a couple of topics to discuss. I haven't posted the topics yet. And then people can call in, and they can call in, and as long as they're civilized, they can stay on and we can talk. If they're not civilized, then they get booted out. But yeah, I can't wait to do that. A lot of people have been asking me. So it's going to be like a radio show live on Twitch every Wednesday at 6 o'clock UK time. Doing that, preparing that, doing a lot of videos on YouTube, editing them. Not a lot of it is out yet. Still finishing my course, doing a lot of workshops for that. Also, just today, Monday, it's out a nice little podcast guest appearance I did for Action VFX Podcast called Ask the Artist. So I'm going to do that.
Right.
That comes out today, which is nice. It was a very intimate conversation about my career and about why I left the mill and why I was burned out. It was a very intimate conversation. I really enjoyed it. It was really nice. A lot of things talked there that don't really come out normally. And I'm just wrapping up a new vegan and vegetarian video for Anna with my wife. For this time, it's a soup. It's one of the best soups I've ever had. It's a pea soup, so people look out for that. It's going to be out in a few days as well. So I'm pretty busy lately, but yeah, it's just with a lot of random stuff, as you noticed.
Nice.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, I was thinking about the kind of things I've been doing lately, and apart from lots of stories at Befores and Afters, one of the big things coming up is SIGGRAPH. And always around SIGGRAPH, there's some nice little conferences that always tie in with the main event. One of those is DigiPro, which actually starts tomorrow.
Yeah.
I'd recommend people get on board with that. If you may be listening to this after it's finished, but I'm sure you can still sign up and check out DigiPro. RenderMan has their art and science fair the week after, and I'll be presenting, emceeing something for that. And then SIGGRAPH, which starts on the 9th of August, has, oh my God, Hugo, so much content.
I know.
I am on the committee. I am part of the committee members that help with the featured speakers, and they're incredible. Really diverse set of people, not talking just about computer graphics, which I think is really interesting for featured speakers. Go and check out the website. It'll be on the show notes. But yeah, that's a big part of what I've been doing the last couple of weeks.
Yeah. Congratulations. It sounds awesome, and I can't wait to hear and see all those conferences. It's going to be a big packed August for sure,
Yeah. So, yeah, very busy. Now, Hugo, the first thing we always talk about on the podcast is what we've been watching.
Yeah.
I think we're going to be pretty adventurous today and try and talk about 3 separate projects.
Yes.
And maybe one of them a bit more in depth than the others.
Yes.
The first one that I wanted to jump into was the Tomorrow War, released a few weeks ago on Amazon Prime Video, starring Chris Pratt. Basically, he goes to the future and kills monsters. I mean, that's pretty much it, right?
Yes, it is. Yes, it is. I don't know what you think of it, but I'll start before we even jump into the visual effects. I'll just mention what I thought about the film. I thought the film was really interesting. I was actually pleasantly surprised. I thought I was going to see, another crappy CG film with sci-fi that doesn't really go anywhere. But it was really compelling, the story. I don't want to spoil it, of course, but it's all about, past and future events that are happening on Earth. You should really go and check it out and try to avoid any spoilers and just watch the whole film without reading anything about it or watching any reviews about it. Just go directly to see the film. But I thought it was really nice and really good performances as well. What do you think about it? You didn't like
Hugo,
You didn't like it. I thought it was nice.
As an action film with scary monster scenes, it was really good. And they nailed a lot of those scenes. So that's probably more about the visual effects that I was impressed by.
Yeah.
As an intriguing film with an interesting story point about needing to jump to the future, I was like, oh, wow, this is really cool. In my opinion, it didn't go much further than that. They didn't really use the future thing very cleverly.
Yeah.
I thought. And in fact, there's a bit of a twist at the end, but that almost isn't related to the future at all.
No.
I guess I wished it had been more of one of those time traveling movies that messes with your brain a bit. But I don't feel like it did that. And perhaps it never intended to.
No. I think your expectation is too high now. Come on. This is just like a sci-fi movie, big budget, summer blockbuster, which would have been awesome on the cinema. That's a fact. It would have been awesome to watch it on the theater. I watched it on a projector, but it's still not the same. But I thought for a popcorn film, it was actually pretty good compared to other films around. I'm not saying it's like a Oscar-winning film. Far from it. Please don't get me wrong. I thought the film was subpar at best for that. But I think that I just enjoyed the type of story. The future angle was quite a fresh thing. But, no one cares about my opinion about it. It's more about the visual effects really that I want to mention. It's one of the best creature designs I've seen in a while. And, creature designs are tricky because they always look the same. And I think there's a bit of a complacency lately in visual effects companies and directors and productions where they just always do almost the same thing. And this time, this is not the same at all. I really would advise everyone to go and read an interview that it's at before and afters from Ian, which really goes deep into the creation of this creature. The creature looks amazing, and which they're called, what was the name? They're called...
White spikes.
Yes, white spikes. They are really interesting with the tentacles and the spikes coming out of their tentacles, and the way that they're animated, it really looks impressive. It's like a mix, of course, of mocap as always, but there's a lot of hand animation as always on these kind of things. It's mostly a show led by Veta, although Framestore and Luma Pictures and Method was also very involved. I thought it was really impressive, especially because it was mostly shot on handheld. Can't believe the amount of tracking that necessitated, and also a lot of it was not green screen. A lot of it was shot on location in the buildings because there's a lot of shots inside buildings. There's a lot of shots inside cities. And there's a lot of, a cleanup of wire removal because of the people jumping and falling down because of the monsters and the strength of the monsters. There's a lot of clean plates, a lot of really complicated visual effects happening here. I thought it was really impressive. What did you think?
Yeah, I really thought the creature design was fantastic. And in that article, you'll see, I think a bunch of people had a go at it, and then one artist was responsible mostly for the design.
Yeah.
You'll see it in the article. And then Weta Digital led the VFX creation of that creature.
Yeah.
Always tough to do like a white creature,
Yeah.
Hugo, because it looks different in different environments, right?
Yeah.
But I mean, they're called the white spikes, and so it had to be. Yeah, like every time it was on screen, it was pretty frenetic and pretty scary. And they did a great introduction of it in that stairwell.
Yeah.
Didn't you find?
Because that's the thing, isn't it? On that stairwell, don't want to spoil the film, but there's like a scene where we presented themselves to them. And it's not really a spoiler, the white spikes, because you see them all over the trailers and all over everywhere on the internet. But they show up very dark. You don't really see them. You just see the tentacles coming out. First, you even think it's like a tentacle creature of some kind. It's really nice, the surprise that they give. But once they show it on all that secrecy with the darkness of the staircase, then they really go for it. And that's really, I think, the most impressive part for me. Usually these kind of creatures, you try to hide them a bit, and they're really full frontal, like sunlight hitting them, like completely full screen showing up, which is remarkable because it really has to hold up. I was incredibly impressed by the way that they've approached the creature, obviously because there's like hundreds of shots here, hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of shots. And so, of course, Weta most likely couldn't really handle the whole thing. Not because they couldn't, it's just because probably they're doing, 1,000 other things. But it was really impressive to see that, Weta led the model and the texture, and then they handed over the texture and the modeling to everyone else. So Framestore, Luma Pictures, and Method basically got the model and the texture from Weta, which is not very usual. A lot of times on these companies, there's not a lot of sharing going around. Like I've been involved in companies like that, which is they're very highly protective of their own stuff. But it was really cool to know that they've actually built up these rigs and then they build up these lighting setups with HDRs from Weta, so that at least they could see if all the spikes, all of the monsters looked exactly the same from all 4 vendors. That's a really big achievement to make the same creature in different pipelines and different companies. Yeah. So hats out for that. It's very impressive.
Yeah, I think you're right about not sharing much, except for more recently.
It's been happening more.
That is what happens.
Yeah. Well, it has to.
That is Marvel. That is basically Marvel films saying you can't do all the Iron Man shots.
Yeah.
Because there's so many, and what if something happens? We need to spread the risk a bit, And so that swapping of models is really common, at least on those films.
Yeah.
And I think what I'm saying with that, though, is that that's made studios better, VFX studios, better at sharing, which is good news. Yeah,
it is.
I'd also say
it was difficult before, I can tell you. Sorry, I didn't want to interrupt you.
No. Oh, just on the white spikes, one interesting thing in the interview, which is with James Price, who is the overall VFX soup, he also mentioned like the stuffies and stand-ins they had on set. And also a full creature build, which may well have been replaced, but it was by Spectral Motion based on the design.
Yeah.
And actually, if you go to Spectral's Instagram page, they have got some of the coolest little videos of that thing, which is really awesome that they're sharing that. It's basically a prosthetic build, a creature build.
Yeah.
I love seeing that.
No, it is awesome. Really, people should go and check it out. What I meant with the sharing of assets is, I've been on a lot of big productions where they did not share everything. I won't name the production, but I was on a production once where the creature had to be done on a certain company, and then the comp had to be done on another company, and nothing could be shared. And the only thing that can be shared is the final renders of one place and the other. And so it was incredibly difficult to get final renders with just an alpha channel from one company to comp on another shot. And we wouldn't allow to get the different render layers. We weren't allowed to get the AOVs because they would have comped the creature final comp. And then it was supposed for us to just do an A over B. Incredibly difficult. And again, just because of red tape and because of pipeline issues and because of studios protecting each other. And I think this is getting better. This was a few years ago. And I think things are getting better, which makes complete sense now, especially now that I know every company has their own pipelines, but there's so many really good tools to convert things. There's a lot of similarities in between pipelines. There's a lot of similarities between render engines. Although they have specific tools on their pipelines, it is easier these days. Back in the day, it was more difficult with custom-made tools everywhere. It was a bit more difficult. I think things have much more democratic now.
Yeah, I mean, look at Thanos. Would you, if you didn't know that Thanos was done by two different companies, would you have known? I didn't think so.
No, of course not. No, of course not.
Anyway, but I agree. Go and see Tomorrow War.
Yeah.
Very accessible on Amazon Prime.
Yeah.
As is, I guess if you live in the US, at least, Space Jam: A New Legacy.
Yeah.
On HBO Max, and it is at cinemas, which is where I think you saw it, Hugo.
Yeah, I went to the cinema. This time a few more people, mostly kids. Every single person on the room was a kid. They didn't shut up. They couldn't stop talking. So I don't enjoy that. But yeah, I went to the cinema to see this thing. I was a relative fan of the first. Well, not a big fan of the first one, but I watched the first one when I was still a teenager. Almost, like I think it was just 18 or 19 when I watched the original one. Went to the cinema as well to see it. Very impressed by then. But I was a teenager, so you get impressed very easily. I don't think I would be impressed this time. But yeah, I don't know, man. I feel this film is a bit messy, to say the least.
I'm going to take it one step further and say that my brain exploded at this film.
I have to say
Having said that, there are two big things in this film that I really loved, and one is when they go into complete Dune mode. So when LeBron James visits Toon World, it's called something, but I'm not sure what it is.
Yeah.
And the animation there, which is 2D looking animation, was fantastic.
Yeah.
And then I have to say, I really enjoyed the basketball game. Okay. There's so much going on there.
Yeah.
With the live action LeBron.
It's a massive production, isn't it? There's so many creatures and so many characters and so many animations. And if you think about it, like, there's tons and tons of creature design and tons of creatures and tons of concept.
It's enormous.
It's enormous, this job. But before we jump into the visual effects, I just wanted to mention, I do also think the 2D section is by far the strongest part. In fact, I spent the whole film without even moving my mouth in terms of laughter, because the film lands so poorly, except when you get to the 2D. When you get to the 2D scene, I started laughing. I started laughing my ass out with the scenes because they were so funny. And it really captured that Roger Rabbit and that, the Space Jam original, all those kind of films really captured. And in essence, is because of the high quality of the animation, the gags, and also these characters are so beloved, and I love them so much, like Bugs Bunny and Daffy Duck, and all these characters show up. Everyone is there, So I also thought it was by far the best part of the film. But before we talk about the visual effects, let me just say that I really struggled with the message of the film. I thought that it was really bizarre to almost the 90s level to have this film where the message was pretty much that, if you play video games, it's bad for you, it rots your brain. And I felt it was such a stupid message. This thing, if you play video games, you don't become LeBron James. And it's like, what? And also the way they make the game and the way that there's
that wasn't the end message.
No,
that was
it wasn't.
The conceit, wasn't it?
But this is such a 90s message, even considering that the video game is bad, when we now have the video games industry surpassing the film industry. I just feel like it's just a silly idea that LeBron James would ever consider the video games are rotting his kid's brain. I feel like it's a really 90s message attached to a film from now. I don't think it's...
I think we have to say, Hugo, spoiler alert. It works out for the person who's the video game inventor, creator at the end.
But then there's other
and
problems.
in fact, video games rock for him.
But it's still in such a cringy way. That's the problem I have. Sure. It's such a cringy method of delivering it. And then also, like, you know, he has one crash on the video game and he loses the files. It doesn't really work that way. You don't really do games like that. That's the thing, the 90s logic of movie logic with no realistic whatsoever. I thought it was really strange, really bad. The whole character inside the server room, oh my god, it was just like the film was. I'll tell you, Ian. I struggled, and I was about to walk out. I tell you what,
really?
I was about to walk out when it started with the server thing. And I'm glad I stuck by because of the 2D section. But I'll be honest, I only stayed because of you. I thought, I'm going to watch this thing until the end so we can discuss this and we can talk about it. Yes, I did that. Like, I thought about, no, I'm going to watch this until the end. But I thought the film was terrible by far. Like, the film is terrible. The film is literally a Warner Bros. Commercial, and I feel like that's a bit weird. You know,
I didn't know how to take that. Because there are parts of that I enjoyed, as in, don't hate me anybody, but I kind of enjoyed seeing the Mad Max thing and the Matrix thing and some other Warner Brothers things. And I at first thought Warner Brothers was being very tongue-in-cheek and clever about it. But now I'm not, I don't know, I'm just not sure. But even that was so much work. Like, the camera would fly by as something Warner Brothers related. And I had to think all those people that did all that work in visual effects to implement that.
Yeah, no, the film, in terms of visual effects, let's jump into that then. Good segue. Like, all those sequences, those are really impressive, where they literally incorporate cartoon characters into really famous Warner Bros. Films. I don't want to spoil it too much, you know, because I think, well, you see some of them on the trailer.
I've told people already.
No, it's fine. Like, you see some of them on the trailer, so you do know about the Mad Max one, you do know about the Matrix one, but there's a few more. A very famous film shows up there, a black and white, very famous film as well. There's a lot of IP from Warner Bros. That they really use, and it's nice to see them having fun with that. But from a visual effects point of view, it's really cool. It seems to me that they most likely went in, and because it was such high, I saw it on the cinema, it was so high quality, so it looks to me like they probably went in and got the original scans, most likely, or at least a very good 4K scan from the archives, because it was flawless. When you saw the Matrix scene and when you saw the Mad Max scene, it was really flawless. The integration with the Dune characters inside these films, which means they had to rotoscope all these scenes from the original film. So that was really clever. And also, like, integrate back in the grade and everything else, because it still looked like the final film. So on that sense, it feels to me like Warner Bros. Did a really cool thing there. So that there's that part of the film where you have a lot of 2D integration inside real films. And then, of course, we have the basketball game, which we've seen some behind the scenes. There's like this really nice, I'll put it on the show notes, a really nice 15-minute long making of, which you kind of see a lot of the green screen that happened on the production. There's also a trailer of 1.5 minutes with some visual effects, but then there's like a 15-minute long thing called, it's from a YouTube channel called Stream Masters or something like that. I'll put it on the show notes, but you see that the majority of the basketball scene was all done in green screen, very typical visual effects green screen with a lot of tracking markers. The first layer of people are all real, and then, of course, all the people on the back, it's all like basically crowd simulation done in 3D or most likely done by hand. I'm not really sure. There's no breakdowns, but it was interesting to see that first layer of people around the green screen, because I at some point during the game, I was just trying to figure out who it was there, and you could see like Batman and the Joker and Catwoman, and you see the guys from the Matrix, and also you even see the ice skate, like the Game of Thrones characters as well. It was really cool, actually. All those Easter eggs. It was really.
Are we talking about Ready Player One or Space Jam? Oh, sorry, Space Jam 2. Yeah, Space Jam 2.
It was like that, wasn't it? Wasn't it like that?
Agree.
It was.
I agree. It was eye candy and fun to watch that. And that game in particular, which must go for like 25 minutes of the film or
Yeah.
longer, is an insane visual effects sequence.
Oh my God, yeah.
Which I believe was done by ILM. The overall production supervisor, Grady Kofer, is from ILM, and ILM was the main vendor on it.
Yeah.
And they were effectively, as you say, taking these live action green screen plates and putting LeBron and some other live action characters amongst CG characters,
Yeah.
CG versions of the Looney Tunes, plus some 2D animation that would have been done by a few different vendors, as I understand. Some of those characters end up becoming huge effect sims, and there's fire and water.
There's a guy that is just water and fire, and the other one has wings, and by the way, they're all mocapped. They're all mocapped by real basketball players. You see that on the behind the scenes as well. Yeah. Really interesting to see that they had a mixture of this green screen stage. LeBron was there, and then some of the characters were there with the mocap suits running around. Which means it was not only green screen, a set extension, a 3D extension, but also like rotoscoping everything in between so that you can fit in the mocap, cleaning up the people from the mocap suits to put the other characters there. Because some of them are thinner. Like, for example, there's a girl that is a serpent. She's much thinner at some points, so you had to clean up a lot of things. It is massive. It's like, 7 or 8 full CG characters. They're running around and playing basketball.
Yeah. Well, and it's the signature moment in the film or sequence. I wasn't always sure what was going on.
My brain exploded. Yeah, I know what you mean with the brain exploding because there's so much stuff going on. It's insane. Very
nice virtual camera moves. I mean, I can't fault it. Maybe the only thing that I wasn't super clear on is Don Cheadle's character ultimately becomes a CG version of himself, bigger, more agile. And they've clearly done a digital, some kind of face scan or 4D capture of him. And, it's meant to be a little bit stylized. Like it's not meant to be photoreal Don Cheadle.
Yeah.
But there was something... Just because they increased his features, and that sort of thing, it just didn't quite nail it for me.
Yeah.
But I almost feel like it was deliberate. Like that's kind of the point.
It must be deliberate because I know what you mean. It becomes Uncanny Valley, really. That is the only character in the film because everything is really stylized. And of course, you have the tunes, then you have the cartoons. So everything kind of fits in. But then Don Cheadle doesn't fit in at all. Like he looks, at some points, the animation looks a bit like one of those, early 3D animations from The Matrix 2 or something. It does really go into that really strange territory of floating animation and some strange facial. But I must say that it must have been on purpose to make it more like a video game. It must have been because that was a video game. It has to be.
Exactly. They're inside a video game, and he's more monstrous there.
Yeah.
I'm not calling it out as bad.
No.
CG.
I'm sure it will show up on. I'm sure that Crew Digital will make a video about it, saying it was a bad CG. But I don't think it was. I think it was a creative choice. It feels like it was a creative choice because everything else around it was amazing. So it must have been. So I think from a visual effects point of view, I would love to see behind the scenes and breakdowns. I don't think we'll get them. I'm not sure. Unless the Blu-ray will have stuff, although maybe not. So I can't wait to see that. I hope it comes out. But I cannot, I can't recommend watching this film. I think this film is not very good. It's a mess. It's super confusing. It's like super messy. The story is just by a wire. And to be honest, LeBron James is not Michael Jordan. He's not a very good actor. Although Michael Jordan wasn't very good either, but he's a terrible actor. So I don't know. I struggled, Ian. I really struggled.
Well, yes, as a film, it's not the best summer film so far. I struggle with these films. I'll tell you why I probably wouldn't recommend it necessarily, is that I constantly think about other hugely successful 2D, 3D hybrid live action films. And of course, the one that everyone thinks about is Who Framed Roger Rabbit, an ILM production with incredible 2D work as well. And it's flawless, right? And I can't believe that stuff went through the optical printer back then for that film. The first Space Jam, 96, done visual effects, done amazing 2D work that Cinesight approached that from a visual effects point of view. Also, my memory of it is great integration. There's been a bunch of films recently that I feel haven't sort of met that level of Who Framed Roger Rabbit. One of those is Tom and Jerry, which the work is incredible, but it just didn't quite feel like those things were integrated in the same fun way. Like the work is great, but the integration didn't seem to work. The Mary Poppins film had a lot of stuff in it, but it's not the core part of the film.
Yeah.
I just feel like I'm always going back to Who Framed Roger Rabbit.
But there's
just something about that.
You know why? Because this is something that I'm sure we'll have a debate on another podcast, not today, but because I have a question about these films, like why do these films do not capture this thing? Why do they fail so miserably to try to capture? In essence, like a lot of people say on YouTube, why do these films suck? And I have a feeling that it has to do with, that's just my personal opinion. I think it's because we do films in a different way, and there's a lot more corporate interference. And I feel like, when you look back at Roger Rabbit, it's a Robert Zemeckis film. Robert Zemeckis is an amazing director, super creative. He's done some of the best films in the world, including, Back to the Future, including so many films. So you have like a strong director with a vision, putting his entire, really making that film what it is. And these days, no disrespect, but there's a lot more corporate interference. There's a lot more boardroom directing. I just feel like these films are like a committee are making them. And that is maybe why the film is so mixed in terms of, in some moments it's fantastic, some moments it's terrible, some moments it's okay. It has ups and downs, almost like looks like the film is made by 10 different people. And I think this is the problem we're currently having with these blockbusters. That's why, in my view, why they suck. Like, I just feel they have no vision. The film has no vision. The film is just like a collection of Warner Bros. IP splattered in the screen, trying to make people on the cinema, oh, look at that one, oh, look at that one, oh, look at that one. And they almost forget about the story, and they forget about the emotional side, and they forget about making an actual film. This is a clear case where the visual effects came first and then the film came second, and it should always be the other way around. It should always be first the film. That's how Robert Zemeckis used to do films. The visual effects were supporting the story he was trying to make, and in some cases it was brilliant. And on this side, it almost looks like, I don't know if it was that, but I'm just like wondering if they kind of thought, okay, we need to do a commercial for HBO Max and Warner Bros. Streaming. How can we incorporate that into a film? And then let's make up the story after. Oh, who's good at basketball now these days? Oh, yeah, LeBron's, yeah, let's call him. And it's all a bit like that. I feel it's all glued with gaffer tape and stickers. I just don't feel that there is like a cohesive plan to make this film. This is not like an MCU film where you feel that there's a structure, there's an idea behind it, even connections to other films, like this is just like, pardon my French or Portuguese, a shit show. That's what it was, like I feel like it was, but yeah, I guess that's a good segue. Marvel.
Well, just to go back to that quickly, I reckon a lot of people had fun watching this film. It did really well for a film that was, open during the pandemic.
It was full of kids. They liked it, I'm sure.
But I agree with you on one point. Is if you ask me to explain what Space Jam 2: A New Legacy is about, it's very hard. And I reckon some good films, the best films, you can actually give a one sentence explanation, right? Yeah. And it's very hard to sort of say, well, it's about LeBron James' son making a video game and not being allowed to, and then he listens to bad Don Cheadle, and it's sort of, oh, okay, whoa, there's sort of too much going on. So I guess you're right. I'm sure someone wrote it, and it's a filmmaker's vision, but
of course,
it does seem imposed heavily. Yeah. We're gonna move on.
I just think it's a bit too much. Maybe they went too far with the product placement and the IP. I don't think it needed to be that heavy. Could have been a bit more relaxed. The film could have. That's why Roger Rabbit is so nice. It's a relaxed film that doesn't overstay its IP and all the things. And when they show up, it's really cool because there's so few of them. So I think that's the control that a good filmmaker can make into. I'm not even blaming Malcolm. What's his name? Malcolm D. Lee. Like I think I'm sure he did his best. I feel like it's probably difficult these days to work with so much IP without having so much input. You imagine the amount of meetings just to get this cleared. I don't even imagine how hard it was.
Anyway,
let's do a segue with. I mentioned how Marvel actually managed to cohesive make these universes for good and better. Sometimes it's good, sometimes it's bad, but I guess that's the last thing we're going to talk about, isn't it? A Marvel show, really, to be honest. Yeah.
Yep, Loki.
Yeah.
Which finished its run about 2 weeks ago of 6 episodes, and an insane amount of visual effects work.
Oh, yeah.
I'll be writing some stories about it, and they'll be coming out after the 30th of July. But we're going to talk about both what we thought about the show and the visual effects.
Yeah.
I'll jump in and say, maybe we mentioned this previously with Wandavision and Captain and Winter Soldier, Falcon and Winter Soldier. I love that this is episodic. I just love watching an episode and then jumping on WhatsApp with my friends to chat about it. I think that is like the best bit of the show, in a way.
Yeah.
And then waiting for a week, I try and avoid some of the like spoiler or prediction articles, but that sometimes makes its way into the WhatsApp conversations. And I don't even think we do that with movies much anymore.
Nope.
So to have this kind of thing that happens with those MCU shows, like, you don't do it with Stranger Things on Netflix because they're dumped all at once, right?
Yeah.
I do love that show, but because there's 10 episodes or whatever at once, you don't chat about it with your friends as much.
No.
So Loki for me was that. Every episode, bar maybe 1 or 2, I was like really intrigued about what would happen. And to me, that's my biggest takeaway, is I just love that side of it. What about you, Hugo?
Yeah, so I agree completely with you. It's amazing to have it every week. I love that format and for people to speak. And also, it's a much easier way to not be spoiled on Twitter, because when Stranger Things came out, I forced myself to watch the whole thing in one night because I knew as soon as I opened Twitter, everything was going to be spoiled. Yeah. So I really enjoyed that part, just like Game of Thrones. I thought Loki was good and bad and good and bad. I thought it had a lot of ups and downs, but before I even talk about that, just like I was mentioning with NBA Jam about the not cohesive, Loki really feels part of this universe now, and we know what happens to him because we see it on Avengers, where he goes with the Tesseract somewhere. We don't know where. And it's really smart that they've invented this entire timeline from that little moment that he stole the Tesseract. It almost feels to me like Rogue One, where they made a whole film about how they got the plans for the Death Star, because that's a really small mention on one of the films, like, oh, someone died to get these plans, and then you now know how many people died. It's almost the same, like Loki went with the Tesseract, we don't know where, and now there's an entire 2 seasons of this thing. I think this has never happened before. We've never seen film and TV integrating this way. I don't think so. This is new, right? Like I've never seen it before, where we have like if you go back and watch the films now, you have a completely different perspective on this scene.
Yeah.
You look at because I went back and watched all the Avengers now, because I finished Loki, and then I went back and watched all the Avengers, and I kind of to have an idea of how Loki, and also I watched Thor as well to kind of have an idea. And you really have a really round down character now because of this. You really have like a really big arc now because of this. It's well constructed with a lot of, there's like some holes in the plot, of course. It's very hard because a lot of different people wrote this thing from all these different films. So it's difficult to have a cohesive, but I thought it was an interesting show. I thought that episode 5 was amazing. I thought it was mind-blowing, not only because of the visual effects, but also the guest appearances that have there, and also the other Lokis, and it's really, really creative, that episode. Didn't so much like the ending, but you know.
Okay.
Yeah.
One point on what you said then was, I really, of course, love that it's making a bigger universe, and you can explore one character in like 6 episodes. That's really cool. But sometimes it doesn't work for me. It actually, in WandaVision and Winter Soldier series, I was like, where the hell are the other Avengers?
Yeah. Yeah.
Like, it to me,
why is he doing a boat, right? Why is he fixing his boat?
Yeah. Yeah, anyway. So that's, who cares?
No.
In Loki, one of the things is in episode 6, I reckon a lot of people were thinking something else. Yeah. Like, I was kind of convinced, maybe this is kind of a boring conspiracy theory. I was kind of convinced that the TVA was Val upside down.
Oh, okay.
And Val is played by Julie Louis-Dreyfus in some of the other shows. Right?
That's like, okay.
And so I was like, oh, there's the connection. Oh, right. And then, of course, it's, this much bigger character from the comic books, which was awesome. It was like a surprise. But you're right. Some people have been a little bit disappointed with episode 6. Why did you not love it, Hugo?
I don't know. I was a bit... that's the problem I had with the show. I feel like in some point... Loki also was an off character on some episodes because, he's supposed to be mischief and he's supposed to be almost like a villain. And then some point on the show, he became too nice. And I feel the whole romantic arc was a bit overstated. It was a bit weird, but I guess it makes sense. He loves himself. I guess that's the whole point. But I don't know if I like the exposition. I hate exposition on films, on TV shows, and I really don't like when they explain too much and they talk too much. That's always been my criticism with Christopher Nolan films. He speaks too much and he talks too much. I would have preferred to leave some more mystery in the table.
Yeah. You mean in episode 6, the 2 Lokis are just chatting to this guy at his desk for like 35 minutes.
Yeah, pretty much.
but I actually found that quite compelling.
Yeah,
just because of the decision to do that.
No, I know,
right?
I know. It's completely completely opposite to all the other Marvel big. I guess the big finale visual effects thing was episode 5, I guess, and I think that's where the TV show can really handle. But I just feel it was too much exposition and too on the nose. Season 2. Here's season 2. I just feel like they could have finished that thing without explaining too much. I didn't felt we needed to explain every single part of it. Also because the explanation was a little bit confusing anyway. I don't know. But I understand what they're trying to do. They're trying to open up this multiverse thing, which really helps for them to do whatever they want with anything. Because now if we have a multiverse, hey, we can have this character back. He can be back. Oh, is he dead? He's not dead anymore. We can now spend another 30 years doing whatever version of the verse that happened on some character that already died or disappeared. Yeah. So, which is, but I feel like looking at these 3 shows, Loki, WandaVision, and Winter Soldier. For me, Winter Soldier is the weakest one by far. I felt it was not very good and very well finished. WandaVision is very creative, but it really doesn't stick the landing. I think Loki is the best one of 3, and I guess that's why it already has a season 2 already, even without even finishing, because
I guess so. It also introduces who's clearly going to be the big bad character. Well, I assume is the big bad new Thanos character. And there's 2 movies set for that, right?
Yeah.
I assume, I am no expert, but there's a new Ant-Man and a new Doctor Strange.
The Doctor Strange is going to be...
seem to go into this...
Yeah, Doctor Strange is all going to be all about this now, because now you can get into the multiverse really well in Ant-Man as well. So that's really interesting. I have to say this little anecdote. So I was shocked to know that that Loki was actually filmed really recently. You know how I know that? Because I was on set about 2 months ago supervising 6 commercials for a company. I cannot say who it is because it's not out yet. So I was VFX supervising on set, and we were on a big stage with a big set. And then next door, it was a very secret stage, with security guards around it. We could not go there. No one really knew what was happening on the big stage. We were on the medium stage. But I was going to the bathroom at one of the days of the shoot. I was there for 4 days, and I bumped into Tom Wiggleston. I bumped into him, and he was dressed as Loki. He was just coming back out of the bathroom, and then I figured, oh, shit, they're doing Loki on that stage. It must be. Otherwise, why would he be dressed as Loki coming out of the bathroom?
Well, Hugo, was he filming Loki? Or was he filming Ant-Man or Doctor Strange?
You're right. You are right. But here's the thing. The next day I saw him again, and he was with this was with the suit, with the tie and everything. And then when I watched the behind the scenes, I saw him exactly with that exact same clothing. And I saw the stage behind him looked the same as the stage where I was.
Got it.
So that means the film, they were still filming 2 months ago, which is really, wow. I was wow. Good job, VFX crew. Damn.
Yeah. Although, Hugo, that doesn't surprise me at all if it was for Loki.
Yeah.
As I understand it, they started filming only in February last year.
They had to stop. Yeah, they had to stop, didn't they?
COVID.
Yeah.
And then, they always do pickup shoots.
Yeah.
It's just a matter of course thing on Marvel.
It could have been a pickup shoot as well. It could have been a pickup shoot. Yeah.
Yeah, and whether that was in Atlanta, where they do film most of Loki, or whether some of it was done in London.
Yeah.
But no, I'm pretty sure, and part of it you'll see in some of the articles I wrote, that the turnaround time on the visual effects was also insane.
Yeah.
But we are talking about television, where visual effects studios are used to that or set up for that, and it's all sort of blurring into one now, I guess, in a way. But very impressive what they managed to pull off, I have to say.
Yeah, I have a few notes just to mention for the visual effects real quick, since this is a visual effects show. You guys should go and check out the behind the scenes. If you have Disney Plus, you can watch it. There's 3 episodes, one of them just for Loki. I must say I was a little bit disappointed by the behind the scenes. I thought it should have been deeper, and it was very much like a vehicle for Tom, it was like a vehicle to showcase Loki than anything else. But we do see a lot of sets there, and it's funny because there's a lot of blue screens. I'll get back to this. A lot of screen replacements for the monitors, for the TV, a lot of set extensions, a lot of matte paintings, a lot of set building as well. But behind the set, it's all CG pretty much. But I was, and also one little mention about a really beautiful visual effect they make with the portals, these doors, which are very inspired by David Lynch's shields on Dune, they speak about that on the behind the scenes. But these shields, when I was a kid, man, these was one of the most impressive visual effects I've ever seen in my life. These big orange shields that they were doing when they were fighting, when they were training. And it's so nice that they've used this as a reference. They even mention it on the behind the scenes. But I want to briefly talk about the blue screens, because it kind of sets up for the next discussion we're going to make about LED screens and about volumes. Most people that I speak on Twitter, on social media, and also on Discord thought that this show was done on a volume.
The volume thing is interesting, because I think there were some scenes on that meteor planet,
Yeah.
or when they're in a train, that seemed very suited to shooting on an LED volume.
Yeah.
And then, as does perhaps some of the scenes on the void, where the void is,
Yeah.
And also because people heard that ILM was the main vendor, or a vendor, and their ILM has their stagecraft set up for LED volume shooting. But I don't think I was that surprised in the end to hear that it wasn't an LED wall shoot, Hugo. And that's based on the fact that they clearly had to get this show up and running quickly.
Yeah.
Maybe they didn't anticipate COVID, sure. But also Marvel, every film or show that I've covered from a visual effects point of view, I always hear that the show comes together in the edit.
Yeah.
And that's Marvel saying that they do it in the edit. It's not like some defensive thing where they say, well, we're doing it because we didn't know what we were doing. It's just that that's the way they do it. Now, if you're doing LED wall volume shooting,
you can't.
You have to make decisions in pre-production.
Yeah.
In terms of the environments and whatever.
I can even tell you, Ian, that is a fact. It's not even just Marvel assuming. I have talked with many, many friends all over the world in companies that work in Marvel Productions, and they all told me things go until the wire, until the last week. Everything keeps changing and changing and changing and tweaking and tweaking and tweaking. But I have heard from multiple people. I've never worked on a Marvel show, but I have heard from either people on set and also people off-set in VFX companies as well, that they have a lot of layers of decision making. It takes a long time to get things approved, and there's a lot of last-minute changes, and things really flow in a creative point after it was shot. So it doesn't really, I don't think, you're right, I don't think it would fit a volume shoot, but it's because I think people are now so convinced everything is shot on a volume, and I have to hand it over to Epic. They've managed to convince everyone that everything was going to be from a volume from now on, which is furthest from the truth. Like, we will still have traditional filmmaking for years to come. A volume cannot replace every pipeline. Just like we discussed, Marvel doesn't like to make decisions like that. They prefer to make decisions on a creative method more to the end of the production so that they have time to think about things and time to go through everything. So not always a volume will work for a production. I think people forget about that. You know?
I also think it's more shot or scene related. Like, Marvel is using volumes. Like on Thor, the new Thor God and Thunder.
Yeah.
I might have got the name wrong there.
Yeah.
In Sydney, they absolutely are using stagecraft.
Yeah.
But it just creatively, I can also see how the void, with so much meant to be happening in the background, as in animation of, that Goliath creature and whatnot, to have that working in a real-time way for, huge scenes just might not have been possible, and also might have slowed the production down. That's another part of it.
But here's the thing that I'm going to tell you, which again was told to me, and I'm not going to mention what show it was or who it was, but most of these productions that are still shot on a volume anyway, like, I'm not saying Thor was one of them, but most of these productions, you end up rotoscoping and replacing the background anyway. A lot of them, they do that anyway, because then they change their minds, or they have to tweak, or not to mention there's like problems with the moe effect of the screens, there's problems with integration with the screens, and also sometimes the CG on the screen doesn't look as good as they would have hoped. So I was speaking with the lead composer about this, and he was telling me that actually sometimes it becomes worse to have it on the volume, because it became so much harder to rotoscope into key to replace something if they're replacing it with something different from what they shot. If they're keeping a similar background, then it's fine. But if they replace it with something else, then you have all sorts of problems with the edges, with brighter edges, light wrapping, spill of light, all sorts of issues that then become even harder than doing keying with the green screen and the blue screen, you know. So there's a lot of complication there that is not really mentioned anywhere when they talk about these things, because I don't think, you know, Epic is very keen on selling this idea that this all works flawlessly, and it doesn't really.
I would say there's more people than just Epic doing it, but you're dead right. They're one of the leading forces.
Yeah,
I think you're right. There's a view out there that they can do in-camera VFX with an LED wall in it. That's all you need to do. And I've definitely covered productions where that's not the case. Yeah. But some of the benefits of it are obvious, like light interaction, or the actors performing on these volumes just seem to love it because they used to have to look into the green void or blue void, and they no longer feel like they have to.
I guess, Ian, we're already on our next topic, aren't we? Because we are, to be honest.
We are. Yes, the thing that Hugo and I wanted to segue into was our usual topic of the biggest VFX tech thing right now. And I mean, we have talked about LED walls and volumes, but because of this discussion with Loki, and in particular, Hugo, a short film that Epic released recently showcasing some Unreal Engine 427 tech in terms of in-camera effects and LED walls. We thought we'd talk about it, and I feel like we have.
Yeah, we have. I have a few other things that I want to talk about that short film, but that's why I said it was a segue, so people were aware that we're not talking about Loki anymore. The reason why I want to talk about this is because of this short film. That's why I've suggested to you, Ian, because this short film came out. I can't remember the name of it, but it's a. But I thought this thing was very impressive. Like this is one of the best productions they've done so far. Using Unreal. This is showcasing their new tools with volume. And man, the shots, I mean, obviously, I know everyone always like just talks about the good stuff. I don't want to spend too much time on the good stuff because everyone has already talked about it. I do have some comments, some negative aspects from that short film that I would like to address, and also keeping in mind that I'm sure these will be ironed out. But I must say that, you know, the beginning, when they're just inside the car, it's literally flawless. It looks photoreal when they're inside the car. Yeah. Like the reflections passing through, the ones on the background. Literally, if you need to shoot a car scene, this is now the way to shoot it. There's no other comment, unless you need the car to maybe drift too much or jump, or if you need a lot of dirt or things on the screen. I mean, obviously, if it's an action film, maybe you prefer to put the cameras on the car, just like they do in Fast and Furious. But if you're just shooting a conversation on a car, which we see on films all the time, this is the way to do it, because, man, it looks flawless. I have nothing to say. They just change the way that you can shoot a shot like this, because normally it usually is a green screen or a blue screen, and then they have lights passing through, and then they shake the car a bit, and it's it looks stunning. I thought it was.
Can I bring something up with you then? I agree with you. It raises the point about this is an amazing technology, and everyone has jumped on the bandwagon and talked about LED wall as a solution. But I guess, Hugo, what you're really saying is, and this clip shows you, is that it's a solution as long as everything comes together.
Yes.
As in the real-time rendering of it, the lighting of it, the shooting of it. In the same way that if you shot this with a bad green screen, poorly lit green screen, it would look crap.
Yes.
So I'm just saying that maybe what you're getting at a little bit is the evangelism behind LED walls.
Yes.
LED walls
can
never take over the general professionalism that's needed on set to shoot these things. And just to take that one step further, it's possibly why Mandalorian looks so good.
Yeah.
Whether or not they replace some of these in-camera LED wall shots is because it's the killer team. Right? The killer team.
And it makes sense. That's the thing. When it makes sense for the story. Man, he has a reflective suit. How else are you going to do it? That's the thing.
Yeah.
Without having to clean everything up and rebuilding him in CG, which makes no sense. So I feel like people are getting into the bandwagon and making it almost like a religion, getting really defensive about it. And and I just want everyone to consider that this should always be a choice. It should always be like, in certain productions it works really well. In certain productions it won't work. And in certain productions maybe there's other ways of doing it. And on this specific short film, the car section is flawless. But then if you go in the rest of the short film, I'll give you a few things that I didn't thought it was that flawless and actually pretty bad. Like the trees, for example, on the background, they look terrible. The CG of the trees, they're not very well made. They are a bit repetitive. They look like they're repetitive assets, really. And the way that they're moving looks a bit noisy, doesn't really doesn't hold up. You also have another problem when they are on the wide shot, when the car parks up, the lighting is not enough for an outdoors. You can really see that the light is not strong enough to look like they're outdoors. Man, you live in Australia. You know how much the sun hits. Like, man, this is not looking like the sun is there. There is no glare. There is no bloom from the sun. There is no actual highlight hitting them properly. As much as they're pretending it's the end of the day, we've all been outside. It doesn't look like that. It looks incredibly fake. And I think it's because the volume doesn't have enough light to pump into this. That's one of my problems. Then other problems I see a bit fake is like when she's inside the cave with the flashlight, when the flashlight is hitting the CG environment, which is a really clever thing with having a synchronized flashlight hitting the background of the wall. But the problem is the technology, the lighting quality doesn't look very good. The shadows look a bit fake. The reflections, the light hitting the rock is very reflective. It's very glossy. It doesn't look really photoreal. I think that's just a problem from the engine, which will improve, I'm sure. So these two problems I'm discussing could be improved. The volume lighting could be improved with better LEDs, with better volumes, with more nits per screen, with more power on luminance on each screen, which could be solved. As we've seen, even on Mandalorian, some shots, they've managed to do it. The flashlight can be solved with better CG in real time. So I guess as Unreal evolves, it gets better and better and better, so you can get better quality flashlight. So, and then for me, the last thing that was a problem for me was that when you're outdoors like this with a car, there's always dust in the air, and there's always dust getting up by the tires, and you always have this atmospheric thing flying through, little particles, little dust things, little things floating in the air, and sometimes you see them in bokeh even because they're just floating. That was also missing, I think. So there's a lot of things that really makes me think that this is a great start, but it's not really there yet.
I would also recast this as a short film, as not being a short film.
Yeah.
It literally is a test.
Yeah.
And almost a feature demo.
Yeah.
And what they're showing is features from 427 of Unreal Engine that's not out.
Yeah.
That are not out. And I think some of the things you've mentioned I've read as well, that people said, well, okay. And I actually, Hugo, think that's a good thing because wouldn't it be cool if people went away with these features and outdid this test?
Oh, they will. I'm sure they will.
Yeah. So I'm trying not to be defensive of it just for the point of it, but I kind of think it's a bit like when you used to see a new thing in Maya.
Yeah.
And it was just like a simple character. It wasn't like Davy Jones or something like that, right? And the reason they do it as a simple character is just to show you what can be done.
Yeah.
I mean, that's how I took away the video.
I'm being devil's advocate on this because I know my view of criticizing this is very unpopular because I know whenever I post this, people are very defensive and they attack me quite often when I start. But I can't avoid it. I'm a VFX supervisor. I am built to notice if something is not correct. And so I did notice immediately the flicker on the first go that I watched it. I immediately saw the lighting. I immediately saw the flashlight quality. I can't help it because I'm a VFX soup. That's what I do. I do notes of shots. So I immediately made a bunch of notes and thought, oh, this is wrong. That's wrong. This needs to be fixed. And again, all these things can be fixed in comp. That's the thing. In comp and in CG and replacement and things like that. I think that so I'm being devil advocate. I think it's very impressive, but I just want everyone to just calm down because I am I'm a bit worried about how this discussion goes. Like it's like, oh, we can now film like this forever, and that is so further from the truth. We've discussed this already many times on this show. Like I feel like we've already discussed the fact that certain shots we cannot do on a stage. Certain stunts. We just saw that on Fast and Furious. We will see that on Top Gun. We will see that on Mission Impossible. There's a lot of things that you need to go on set. But I want to go one step further, and I want to talk about what happens on set from a creative point of view, which a lot of you listening might not know because you've never been on set. Whenever you go on set, there is this creative flowing happening that kind of goes between the DOP, the director, the VFX supervisor, everyone involved, the cameraman, the crew, the lighting crew, the gaffer, everyone. And especially when you're in location, it really shines because if you have the correct crew, things happen on set. Like you suddenly find a better corner on a building. Oh, shit, that corner looks better. Or you find the lighting. Oh man, at this hour, 12:25, this is perfect. The light is hitting the ceiling and it's hitting the shadow and it's really nice. Let's shoot, let's film. And also like the actors, sometimes the actors come up with a new line or they come up with a new thing or they pick up a different object or they pick up another object or they open a door or they go somewhere else on the stage instead of the place where you thought you was going. So this thing that happens on set that really builds most of the films we know today, especially the really famous films and the masterpieces in cinema, happen. It's a mixture between you prepare things, you make a plan, but then it goes off rails. Sometimes the plan goes off rails. There's a lot of spontaneity. There's a lot of things that come up on set. And I'm a bit worried that when you're on a volume like this with pre-made assets, with pre-renders of everything, that this spontaneity goes away because it's so sterile, it's so hard for you to be experimental when you are on a stage like this where everything is already prepped to be in that way. So I have that problem with this. Not that I thought this technology is amazing and it will change cinema forever, but I just want people to still try to keep this flow of creativity. And sometimes, even if you shoot on a volume, maybe we need to replace the background because it didn't work out. It could happen, it still could happen.
I mean, everyone wants to go and film in the middle of Africa.
Of course, I know.
If they're doing a Saharan film or something like that. But I suppose the promise or the opportunity here is that sometimes you don't need to leave Pinewood to do something, and therefore you're saving costs. The other promise, Hugo, possibly, but more work needs to be done, is that creativity and ability to change things, change the view, change the sun, is enabled at least a little bit by real time.
It doesn't. No, now, that's where people think it's true. It's not. That's the thing. It's not. Because
it's
when
enabled
you're on set,
more than just shooting on a green screen stage, surely.
No, I'm not talking about shooting on a green screen. I'm talking about going physically to a location. Yes, I am. Because, what we just saw in this short film, this could have been shot on location. It could have been on a cave. This entire thing normally would have been on the Grand Canyon, and then you would have had a cave, and then you would have shot it there. There's no need for a VFX for what they shot. No need. It's literally a crew on a desert filming it, and then you find a nice cave and you shoot it. I'll be honest.
Well, if you can't find the cave.
But you will. You'll find something, and then you will work with what you have. That's the problem. I feel like from a creative point of view, people are relying too much on, we have infinite opportunities. No. That's not how good film is made. Good film is made when you don't have opportunities and you don't have everything. And then you have to work with what you have. That's why films become so creative, because You have problems and you have challenges. You cannot overcome the challenges, so you make shit up while you're there, and that will never change. I am just concerned that you go to a stage and someone like a director comes in and someone turns to you and says, "Okay, so we can have anything here." And we're going to be like, "Oh, okay, what are we going to do then?" "Oh, I don't know." Like, it's really, I feel that not having all asset to everything, not having all the capabilities drives creativity and makes films more interesting. I believe this really on my bone because I've been on set so many times and things happen out of the blue by a problem. Problems lead to solutions. And I'm a bit worried that this becomes a bit too sterile and it becomes a bit too pipelined and too technical. I thought the short was really impressive, but I didn't saw anything on the short that couldn't just been done on a forest somewhere or on a stage somewhere. That's the thing.
Okay,
you know?
I think I get that completely, and maybe it comes back to the thing we were talking about, which is where this technology works depends on the project.
Yeah,
it works for alien space
yeah.
environments because you can't get those on Earth, unless you go out to Jordan and shoot in the desert where every Ridley Scott film is made. Oh, did I just say that out loud?
Iceland as well. Like, he goes to Iceland a lot.
Well, that's sort of my point, is that there's only so many films that can use the black sands of Iceland.
I know.
For that alien
I get that.
landscape.
I get that. Ian, like, I'm being the devil advocate here. I'm just like opening a discussion that I don't see anyone having. Like, I feel like people, well, I'll be honest. Like, I've heard more, like, if you hear sometimes the Roger Deakins podcast, the Team Deakins podcast, they do mention this a few times. Not about the volume directly, but the way how creativity works on set and how things change on set, on the go. He talks a lot about that, and I completely agree with him. Having been on set as many times as I've been, I feel that there's like something happens when you have all this collective thinking, trying to solve a problem in the middle of nowhere. And I don't want to lose that. That's the thing. I feel that, like, the volumes, or I don't want to sound like the old guy that doesn't want technology. Man, I'm one of the most technological people that you probably know. Like, I'm very high technology. I just want everyone to kind of consider that there are choices, and sometimes it's a good choice and sometimes it's not. Sometimes it's just easier to go to a street and film the street than making the street on Unreal. I'm just making that proposition that sometimes there are other ways of doing things, and the old ways are not to just be thrown away. I feel this is the same discussion we were having about 2D a few weeks ago. When 2D became out of fashion, everyone dropped it, and now everyone is trying to get back to it. I don't want people to just drop everything because there's a new shiny toy. We should all kind of work together and, like, maybe use the volume sometimes, maybe use on set sometimes, and just kind of use it to its full potential from a creative point of view to the benefit of the filmmaking.
Well,
not just because
maybe that's happening.
I see people on LinkedIn putting posts saying, "Oh, I'm going to do a volume production. Don't know what it is yet, but I can't wait to do it." And it's like, what? You're just doing it because it's a volume production? You do it in purpose because you want to do... It's just because they want to be hip and they want to sound cool because they said, "I've done a volume production." And I don't want to go into that kind of territory because we've been here before with the 2D and with other things that kind of went out of fashion and now they're back. So that's
I think you're right. You're grabbing on to what most filmmakers want, which is some sort of much more practical, aesthetically interesting, pleasing, visceral experience that LED walls feels just like being on a soundstage. Yeah. And, however, the clear reason for it is sometimes, well, we're in the middle of a pandemic. That's one reason. Cost is another. There are certain locations you can't go out and shoot if your story requires it.
Yeah.
I'm just going to bring up one thing here. There is a really great American cinematographer article, the cover feature from the latest issue, which has a couple of has a story on a couple of what seem to be upcoming productions, which is kind of unusual.
Yeah.
And I liked the way that those were framed. Like one of them is one that requires ocean plates.
Yeah.
And, there's a clear way that they've gone and shot the array for those to be used on a LED volume. There's amazing examples of is it a like a 911 fire series, and the street scene looks, it's just a still that I've seen.
Yeah.
It looks fantastic.
When they're inside the ambulance, it looks stunning.
Yeah. So I think it really is, we're kind of saying the same thing. It'll work if it works.
Yeah, that's the thing.
Shot.
But that's what happened on The Mandalorian. If you go back and watch the behind the scenes of The Mandalorian, sometimes they're on stage, sometimes they're outdoors. They're not always on a volume, although people think they're always on a volume. There's a lot of shots, especially that big train sequence when they're like going between on this big forest planet. That entire thing was done in location in a backlot, with some green screen.
Yeah.
So there's a lot of that going on as well. That's the thing. Like, that's what I'm just a bit fed up of watching people booking volumes to make experimental tests instead of just, okay, here's my film. This shot needs to be on the volume. That shot needs to not be on the volume. This shot needs to be outside. This shot needs to be on a green screen. What's the problem with that? You don't have to suddenly just throw away everything and just do everything on a volume. Just like this short film, the beginning inside the car looks stunning. The rest could have been done in a different way, I think. So I feel like to make it look better, you could have the outside door, you could have probably put like a 10K light to make a better, more light scene, put it on a green screen, and you would have had like a brighter environment to put in. So, and then you would have offline rendering as well. I'm really glad you mentioned this American cinematographer article. Now that we've lost Cinefex, unfortunately, I'm starting to think American cinematographer is really my go-to place now. Although I know that they don't go they don't go to VFX a lot, of course, because they're more focused on the shooting. But I really recommend everyone getting the magazine, because as a visual effects artist, to know this level of detail of how the lighting was done, how the lenses were done, what camera they used, because it's really granular. They go into the sensor they use, the lenses they use, the sets. Sometimes you even have schematics of the lighting setups. The magazine is outstanding, and the openness that these DOPs have to discuss it's incredible, isn't it? Like, I just, a couple of months ago, the David Fincher film, the article about, what was the name of his film? Mank. That article was stunning. Like, it had so much information. I feel this magazine, don't miss out, because
much more candid than your typical other coverage. I'd also call out another magazine, which I think is still called ICG, from the Camera Guild, and that's from a different guild, and they produce a really beautiful glossy magazine, which is essentially free to read every time it comes out. A really great journalist writes sort of cinematography / VFX articles in there, Kevin H. Martin. He's fantastic. And look, VFX Voice, which I do write for, they have produced so much content, and often get to cover these things before anyone else. I really think they're hitting their stride as well.
They are, and it's free if you are a VFX Society member. It's completely free. It's a really good magazine.
I would love to see even more detailed stuff in there, but often they're constrained by how much the studio allows them to talk about.
Which that's why
it feels a bit different.
I'm surprised by Americans. I'm surprised how much. I guess maybe the DOP have more power, but they go in depth quite a lot, and which is surprising to me, because sometimes they do show things that we would never dream to even know in visual effects, which is a shame. We should, but I guess this is a relationship thing. I think I've mentioned this. I can't remember if it was on the podcast or another podcast. I don't know. They all merge into my head. But I did mention this somewhere that I think it was on our podcast. Yeah, we talked about that last week, 2 weeks ago. where I think it's also up to us to kind of like get the studios to allow us to talk more. And I think that comes into the contracts and the way we approach the work that we're bidding. And I just feel that the DOPs have so much more power than a VFX supervisor has, which shouldn't really be the case. And you can kind of really see, and you can tell that when you see how they talk and how they interviewed, how they do features, and not just for the magazine, but also to other places as well. So, yeah.
I think you're right. There's a little tiny nuance with this, which is you make the new Ant-Man film and you're the DOP.
Yeah.
You finish shooting on 1 July.
Yeah.
You tend to do the interview with the magazine on 5 July.
Yeah, before
and
it's
then
even
the film
done.
doesn't come out until May.
Yeah.
And so you've kind of been really fresh and you've sort of remembered all the cool things that happened in production, and no one from Marvel, Disney has said you can't say this or whatever.
Exactly.
And so it's a slight nuance difference that those magazines which cover production, this is not always the case. They tend to get in a lot earlier. Yeah. So
you're absolutely
maybe
right.
There's a bit of professional jealousy coming through with that one.
It is. Definitely it is. No, it definitely it is. For me, I love working with DOPs, and I really love. I had really good time on set. Never really had a bad time with DOPs. I just feel that I wish the VFX supervisor position also had those kind of things. You know, also articles and also interviews like that, without having so much grip around the studio, which I completely get. But I hope it becomes a bit more open, because I feel that sometimes on some productions we don't even hear anything about them, which is a bit sad. I wish that we knew a bit more about them, and a lot of things are secret, and sometimes they don't really make a lot of sense that they are secret, especially if you're talking a few years later. Who cares if I talk about how the VFX was done of a film from 10 years ago or 5 years ago or 6 years ago? I just feel sometimes the secrecy is just for the sake of it, instead of really protecting anything, to be honest, you know.
I was really surprised the other day when I did an interview about F9 with Peter Chang, who's from DNEG, and he was the production suit. He talked about this deleted scene in F9, which was
awesome.
going to use the original plates from the 2001 film.
Yeah.
Like original scan plates, and set up a scene with Vin Diesel and Paul Walker, but then have Vin Diesel's newly introduced brother, John Cena, as a young guy, like watching this scene. I'm like, oh my God, this has to be in the movie, but it wasn't in the movie.
It was an amazing scene, wasn't it? I know.
Yeah.
You actually said, oh my God, on the interview as well. You were like, it was awesome, wasn't it? I can't believe it was out.
But Peter was very candid about that, which I really appreciated. And I'm not always sure that they can feel so candid. So, it's tricky. Okay, Hugo. Wow, we've really jumped into LED walls and our opinion on Space Jam. I think we might need to wrap it up. What we always wrap it up with is we talk a little bit about things we've seen on the web that people should check out. What should people check out, Hugo?
Since it's such a long episode, I only want to say two things, you know, really. Apart from what I've mentioned on the beginning, don't forget to go to Twitter and to Twitch. Every Wednesday, I'm going to be doing a call-in show. If you have questions or if you want to talk a certain topic, even topics we discuss here, show up on the show and let's talk it like a radio show. So I'll be on Twitch on Hugo's desk. But I wanted to suggest, of course, the Disney behind the scenes for Loki, Winter Soldier, and Wandavision, especially the Wandavision show, which the behind the scenes is amazing. You know, the way that they go through, you know, the replacement, like the shooting in black and white, where they had to paint Paul in a different color for him to show up in the black and white, the way they did full head replacement on every shot for him, almost the way that they've invented this interference, like a TV ray tube thing that they've made around the environment. All these little things are really in-depth discussed on the WandaVision behind the scenes. I really would recommend, if you have to watch one of the three, this is the best one. Yep. And then a last-minute shout-out to a new forum. I know we discussed forums on the first episode. a new forum just recently opened from Action VFX. It's a visual effects forum. It's called forum.actionvfx.com. Go and check it out. It's really new. Very few posts, very few people still there, because I think it's like 2 weeks old. A lot of interesting discussions already happening there. Maybe check it out. I'm going to be starting to post a few things there as well. So yeah, we were talking about forums, so I figured that it could be good for people to go and check out from Action VFX.
Awesome. So the behind the scenes that Hugo's talking about, they're actually called Assembled.
Yeah.
So it's like got a name.
Yeah.
And we've actually talked about it before, but I secretly hate them because they show a lot of the behind the scenes like a week before the VFX stories are allowed to come out. So anyway, no, I really love them.
I know what you mean, because now they control everything, even the delivery of the documentaries. I know what you mean, because now, yeah. But I wish they were more in depth, though. But the Wandavision one is pretty good. I feel that they've made a really good job. And also the actors are so nice and they're so open and they discuss. I love Paul Bettany on the behind the scenes. He's so funny on the behind the scenes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I was going to give a quick shout out to a few people I follow on Twitter, who I just love, and actually who have so much amazing in-depth VFX information. Todd Vasari is one. He's a comp soup at ILM.
Yep.
It's amazing. At T Vasari. Obviously, I'll include these in the show notes. I mean, he's just the number one VFX Twitterer around.
Absolutely.
There's no.
I was so proud that he retweeted my tweet. I was so proud.
Yeah. Steph Soretti is a VFX soup at Marvel who posts a lot of great stuff, commentary about visual effects, VFX reference. I really love stuff that he tends to put out there. And the other person who I just think has some of the best, I would call it retro VFX stuff, is Johnny Banter.
Yeah.
Who has a constant daily posting of VFX stuff that he talks about under VFX archaeology. That's not the handle, but it's in relation to that. So please go and check those guys out. I'll put some links in the show notes. One other quick shout out is I've just started a quick thing at Befores and Afters called Tech Weeklies, where I noticed there was so much tech information that I couldn't do a post of for every day. So at the end of the week, I tend to bundle those up and put them as a weekly post. So go and check that out, Tech Weeklies. But Hugo, that's it. I think this is one of our longest podcasts.
It is. One last thing I just want to tell everyone. If you guys liked this podcast and if you really enjoyed what we're doing, don't forget to go and leave a nice review on Apple Podcasts. It really helps our podcast to grow. And also don't forget to subscribe to my YouTube channel. As you know, I have a video version of this podcast up in there. And it always has a lot of clips and a lot of videos. It takes a long time to edit that, but I really have a lot of pleasure putting those up so that people can watch some of the things that we are discussing here with references to photos, images, and behind the scenes. And don't forget to subscribe to the channel. It's completely free. It harms no one. Just press the button.
Awesome. Well, it's been fun again, Hugo. I can't wait for the next one, which will be episode 5.
Yep.
But thanks again for taking the time.
It's not a problem. It's a pleasure as always. I'll see you next time, man.
Thanks, everyone. See ya.
Bye.